Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Let's Process That podcast. I'm Emily Christopher.
And I'm Nick Connor Camp.
And we are so glad that you are joining us once again. Thank you to everyone who has liked, subscribed, followed, done all the things. We are loving all of your questions, all of your feedback. Thank you for interacting, because that is what this is all about. So we want to process here as Nick and Emily, but we also want to hear about how you guys are processing. It's been awesome to hear about the multiple groups of people who listen together and then process the podcast episode that week together. So cool.
That should be fascinating.
I love it. I wish I could be a fly on the wall on all of them and just hear what you guys are talking about. Like I said, whether you're sitting down with friends or family, coworkers, it's just so cool that you guys would do that with what we're doing. So we love it. That's what, again, this is all about, is to be able to look at a topic and be able to process together and grow, heal, engage, gain perspective, all of those wonderful things. So thank you guys so much. So without further ado, we're going to dive right in. This has been, again, another topic that's been brought up to us, and we want to go there and explore it. So we are talking about forgiveness, which is a big topic, but as Nick had teased a few episodes back, he is writing a book on forgiveness. And so, hey, what better thing to talk about than something you've actually written an entire book on? So Nick, I'm going to toss it to you and you start us off.
Sounds good. What's more universal than having to deal with forgiveness and unforgiveness issues? We as human beings, as we interact with one another, constantly have to deal with this issue about forgiveness. I am not an expert. For those of you who listened to a podcast several weeks ago, I met a gentleman named Sterling Gardner, who I had decided I was going to do whatever he told me to do. And he told me, you have to write a book on forgiveness. Now, I had read books on forgiveness. I have studied the Bible on forgiveness. I've preached sermons on forgiveness. So I wasn't, totally unaware about the subject. It's just not something that I thought I'd sit down and write a whole book about. And I remember Sterling sent me a lead to how to write a book in 90 days. And basically it was like, just write the book. You don't have to put everything you know about every subject into one book. Just write what you know about that one subject for that one book. And so I did. I sat down in 90 days, kicked it to an editor, and last night got it back from the editor. So she said, and she was like, don't be afraid by how many markups there are and how much I corrected and changed. So I haven't even opened it. I'll probably do that tomorrow or Wednesday. Anyway, saying that, I sit down and I just start writing a book. What do I know about forgiveness? And I think the most universal thing about forgiveness is it's something we all have to address. We all have to face it sooner or later. And I think the biggest takeaway for me that I've always been able to lean into is forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not giving the other person a break, a blank check, the right to hurt you again. You don't even have to be a relationship. You don't ever talk to the other person again the rest of your life. But forgiveness, and I'm going to be, if you don't mind, Emily, I'm just going to start off right here, go straight for the heart of it. Are you ready?
Let's go. Yeah.
There's a quote out there, and I remember a woman that I know well who said this quote, and it's this: my abuser lives in my head rent-free.
Mm-hmm.
My abuser, because of me not forgiving them, lives in my head. I give them way too much thought, way too much energy, way too much of my time, and they live in my brain rent-free. And the concept of forgiveness, it may help the other person at some point, but they may not even have to know. Forgiveness is saying, you know what? What you did was wrong to me. I'm going to forgive you for that. Stop rehashing everything that happened and how bad I want to get even with you. For the benefit of you no longer living in my head, and I'm not wasting one more second on you. And I think most people, if they understood, now forgiveness is way more sorry, hit my microphone. It's way more altruistic than that. But in its simplicity is we give ourselves permission to move on and not keep that person dangling around in our subconscious all day long. And really and honestly, this conversation we're having right now came up because of a podcast several weeks back where you talked about after your divorce that you had forgiven your husband and that you would wish good, your ex-husband, and you wish good for them. And people responded like, how do you do that? How do you want good for this guy that you guys went through a really hard season? And that's what spawned us to want to have this conversation. It was a gift you gave yourself. He benefits from it. But at the end of the day, you're not saddled with all that old baggage. Now, can you talk about that at all? Can you unpack that at all, Emily?
Absolutely. So before I even dive in, I want to say that forgiveness, I'm learned and I'm still learning so much about it. Because it's such a very layered thing, depending on the wound and
Sure.
what transpired. But you will go through cycles of forgiveness. If someone's really, really hurt you, it may be cycles for life, which I know can sound kind of overwhelming. But there's triggers, there's things that get brought up, and you kind of have to keep making the decision to forgive. And this is very raw for me. I'm 2 years out, or over 2 years from being divorced. And there's still things where I have to pause and be like, oof, I just release forgiveness, in this moment. I was triggered this morning. Yeah. And I knew this podcast we were recording, we knew the topic. And I was like, ain't that like the devil to do that when I was supposed to be talking about this? After just a couple of podcasts ago, I was like, la 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 la. And I really had to pause because I was very upset. I don't cry easy. And I was so upset that I was crying, which again is shocking. And I was on the phone with my mom. I was like, oh my gosh, I've not heard you this upset in a long time. And so I had to pause and release forgiveness again. So even when we go through all of the steps of forgiveness, we will most likely have to revisit some of those things again.
Yeah.
And it's giving yourself grace to do that. Because I think a lot of times we get somewhere in our forgiveness process and we think, that's it, that's all, I'll never think about it again. And that would be great and awesome. But the truth is that there is times where it will come back up. And so I get the opportunity, just like I did 9 hours ago, to say, I'm going to keep releasing forgiveness. This person does not have a hold on me. This person does not get to dictate my emotions. And I'm releasing that to them, but most importantly, to myself. Beautiful. And it's so difficult and hard sometimes, but you get the power. And that's what I had to learn. I get the power. This person, I refuse to let them have the power over me. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of steps to get there. There's a lot of stumbling around on it. There's a lot of heartache and battling that will go on with that. But like you said, this is not about them. This is about me. Yeah. I am worth it enough to stop wrestling with this and to release this. I forgive them and I am moving forward. And I may have to say that 5,000 times today, but I'm going to do my best to keep my head up. And that may look different. That may be me pausing for a little bit and having a good cry. That may be me looking in the mirror and giving myself some affirmations. But it's going to be something that I'm going to decide to do because I'm worth it.
That's beautiful. So would you say that forgiveness is part of self-care?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes. Wow. Yes, I would. I love that. Forgiveness is self-care.
So one of the quotes I use in the book is, unforgiveness is like drinking rat poison and hoping the rat dies. Mm-hmm. So we're sucking in all the poison, the toxins. We're rehashing everything they said. We're thinking about all the things we want to do to them and what we would say to them if we run into them. Fantasize about revenge and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we rehash it and rehash it and rehash it. Next thing you know, we spent hours emotionally torturing ourselves when they're not even probably even thinking about us. They've probably even moved on or they don't even know we're mad or we're hurt or anything. And so I just bring that up to say that why are we needlessly spending hours of emotional energy drinking the rat poison, hoping that joker dies? And part of forgiveness is a free gift we give ourselves, and it's part of self-care. It's saying, I can wake up today and not be tormented by the behavior of other people because I made the decision to just forgive them and say, you know what? I'm not holding this against them anymore. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to release them. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to stop rehashing everything. And I think it's part of being healthy emotionally.
Yes. And I think it's sometimes really hard for those of us who are justice people.
Oh my gosh.
Woo! Which is me. If you know anything about my personality, man, justice. Justice must be served. Like, it is something that it could be the smallest thing, but I love justice. And I remember when things were going down a couple of years ago, and I was having a conversation with someone who had walked down the same path as me. And she said, time will do the talking. There was a song written in the 90s, and I can't remember the girl's name. It's like a singer-songwriter. She had a song called Time Will Do the Talking. And she reminded me, she said, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to be the one to serve justice. It will happen. It always happens. And so you forgive and you start healing and working on yourself.
Yep.
And time will do the talking. This person, what will be revealed the thing that needs to be revealed will be. Like, it will come to pass. And so you have to just forgive and watch it unfold. And sure enough, it did. I didn't have to go swinging a battle axe.
Nope.
Everything came out and it played it out how it was supposed to. And I didn't have to go into a battlefield to earn this justice.
I love it. And then we're talking about your situation is a really big situation. One of the things I talk about in my book is that practice on the small stuff. When people do petty stuff and we're tempted to not forgive them, we're tempted to ruminate in it. That's the time when we really build our muscle. That's the time when we're like, you know what? I want to forgive everybody, but right now I have 5 people on I cannot forgive you list. And so just move them off to the side and give yourself grace. Just say, right now, I don't have the grace for that. I do not have the grace to forgive them right now. Move them off the list. Who's somebody I can forgive? And as we start practicing by pulling people up and one by one, just choosing to release them from whatever it was they've done, it doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't give them permission to do it again. It doesn't mean you have to be their best friend. But choosing to say, you know what they do is wrong. I'm going to release them from that and practice that and get a couple of those under your belt. Then go on to some of the bigger offenses in your life. You don't have to start with the big ones, and you don't have to forgive everybody at the same time. I think it's a journey. Like you said earlier, it truly is a process. And there's days you think, I'm completely good. And then a trigger will happen and you have to go back and do it again. But I just say to people, be proactive and think through people that you need to forgive. And by practicing it, you're going to have the relational muscle to be able to tackle the big ones when they come. I don't know that how much work you did before you had to forgive him, or if there was just grace, or if you had moved on in your life and Adrian or somebody, you had other relationships. But I'm sure that didn't happen all at one time. I'm sure early on, like you said, you wanted justice. And I'm assuming that meant like pain, like serious pain. But did you have to do, was it a one-time thing, or did you have steps you had to take?
Oh no, there was definitely steps. And like I said, it for a long time, it looked different almost every day, because you'd go from like, well, I don't care, blah, 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 I'm going to be better without that, in my life. And then sometimes it would be sadness, or embarrassment or disappointment, failed expectation, like all the things. And so a lot of times I would just let myself feel those things. Because as humans, obviously we don't like pain. We usually want things to be like, okay, hunky dory, like we're moving on. But yeah, it was definitely a combination. I mean, I know one day I think I'll be able to look back and articulate a little bit better, but so much happened so fast as well. Because like once the decision was finally made, the ball just started rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew for me, either it was get run over by it or just run and start actively pursuing forgiveness and healing. And I think a lot of times people don't allow themselves to feel all the things
Yeah.
or to really sit back and be like, okay, let me just process what's going on here and take the necessary steps. Because
Yeah.
you may need to write some things out. I know you talk about journaling and writing a lot because you are a writer. And so sometimes it's amazing if you'll just sit down and start writing a letter to somebody, even if you have no intention on sending it, like just writing those things out, you'll be fascinated with what comes out. Because it's a different medium that you're probably not used to exploring. Sometimes it is talk therapy where you get to talk through things. Sometimes it's art. I know so many friends of mine that are artists, they're like, oh, I release so much forgiveness. And you can tell what pieces of art that I have expressed this healing journey on and through.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so it does look so different for every person, and that's okay. And I think one thing that I do want to say is that, we come from a culture, especially in the Christian realm, that, they're like, you need to forgive them right now. Right now. You got to forgive them. And it's like, there's so much more to that. And as Christ-like as I would like to be in my life, I am not Christ. So I have to deal with the human side of stuff and ask for grace to be able to do the Christ-like things. And that may take time. That may take a certain process, or me being able to express myself in a different way, or again, just the timeline of what that looks like. And so that's also important to know. I really want to say that as long as you're saying yes to forgiveness, that doesn't mean you've walked the full journey yet.
Absolutely.
Is still a huge thing. And so it's okay just to be like, I'm going to forgive them. I don't know what that fully looks like yet, but I'm going to say yes to the journey of doing that. That right there is big enough and a huge accomplishment. That doesn't mean you're signed, sealed, and delivered. So it's okay to take that time and go through the process.
Love it. Just throw a little Peter Frampton in there. If you know, you know. So two things that just sparked when you said that. Number one is, and this is important, somebody needs to hear this, you cannot forgive the person who's still violating you. If you're still being wronged and you're in a painful situation, relationship, you can't forgive someone who's actively still doing the stuff. So you got a divorce. You blocked him on social media. You brought some necessary endings, which gave you space to know that you were safe, and then begin the process of forgiving. The person out there right now that's listening, that's in an ongoing, perpetual bad relationship, who wants to learn to forgive, you can't forgive them because they're still violating you. You're going to have to do something to create that space. That's number one. Number two, I used to say this to a woman who's been, say, sexually violated. If we love that woman, we have to at some point encourage her to forgive, because the gift is for her. It's not for the other person. It's for her. But if we encourage that person to forgive too early, we violate her all over again. We have to give her have a chance to feel it, to name it, to be associated with all those pains. If she gets violated and then we rush in and say, it's your Christian duty to forgive that person, you violate that woman all over again. And I think we have to be very careful that forgiveness is a process. I love what you just said. We get to a place where we make a choice. That choice does not change our emotions. That choice begins the process where hopefully our behavior and our emotions will change, but it doesn't happen overnight.
No. And like I said, that journey could take as long as it has to take.
Yeah, rest of your life.
Yeah, and that is okay. And especially on, you just mentioned when someone's been sexually violated or abused, anything like that, I just always want to be so careful. I don't want to discredit or devalue the impact that that's made on somebody's life.
Yeah.
And so operating out of gentleness is pertinent. It is a non-negotiable. Like,
Yep.
and I know I mentioned this a few episodes back that like we just really don't know what people go through. And so how dare I force someone into, even saying the things, even though in their heart they probably didn't, right? We can't just rush that process. So like, why are we forcing someone to say things or, make a declaration if they've not done the heart work to be there? And I don't think that's fair, because that's, again, another Christian thing that sometimes happens in evangelical circles where it's like, okay, just forgive them right now. We're just going to do it right now. And it's like, they may not be there, and that's okay. So again, walking out those steps, choosing to just say, I'm on the journey. It may not be complete or absolute yet, but I'm on the journey. I'm on the path to forgiveness.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking through how when I get hurt, I need a few minutes to name the hurt, to become acquainted with it, to have a relationship with it. It's almost like I feel like I have not validated myself if I don't allow myself to feel what I feel. I'm going to forgive you, but I need a few minutes for me to figure out why I feel the way I feel and to honor that. And then to make sure, because I can't put up healthy boundaries to protect myself in the future if I don't know how I am wounded today. And so if you said some things that put some triggers in me, I'll forgive you, but let me have a moment to name it, to feel it, to have a relationship with it, and then say, okay, the reason that hurts so bad is not just this situation, but this has happened 7 or 8 times, maybe with different people, maybe it's the same person. But we need to give people the space, not to waller in their pain, but to feel it, to identify it. They may not have healthy boundaries, and they may need to put them up, but they can't identify those if they don't even know how they feel.
And I was the world's worst at that. Like, I would be so upset about something, but I wouldn't give myself a chance to actually be like, oh my gosh, well, the reason I'm so hurt is because XYZ, something that this is a pattern that I keep seeing and I just feel violated or whatever. I would just jump into bitterness or anger. And it's choosing yourself, just like choosing forgiveness for yourself, choosing yourself and honoring yourself enough that you are like, I'm going to figure out why this is so painful, or like, what are the things I'm going to sit with this for a moment. Even though I hate it, it sucks, it's not fun, but why do I feel this way? And that way you can articulate those words to a person or whatever those next steps may be in your forgiveness journey. But yeah, if we can't say it, then how are we going to get the other person to understand where we're coming from?
Completely. And in some ways, we betray ourselves when we don't allow ourselves to feel the pain that is real to us. And we just brush it under the rug, go on and forgive, say the words, move on. But in some ways, we betray ourselves, and we deserve the right to feel that. A minute ago, you said something that's off the scale. It's the very end of the journey is forgiving yourself. That's the hardest person to forgive, is to forgive yourself. And maybe part of forgiving ourselves is being gracious and forgiving other people. And maybe that's part of the process is we know what we're capable of. We know all the things that other people do not know about us. And so sometimes, not sometimes, it is a fact that we are the hardest people to forgive as our own selves. Maybe people bouncing against us, bumping into us is part of the process and the journey for us to really be able to receive who we are and to accept that and celebrate that.
Yeah. Oh, forgiveness of self. I feel like that was a whole nother sector of just kind of what I've been on the last couple of years. And I remember my mom, she came to visit a couple of months ago, and we were just having one of those good old mother-daughter heart-to-hearts cry hug thing. And she was like, and she asked me, she said, have you forgiven yourself?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just asked me that. But I was like, yes, it's harder because I get mad at myself easily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like we all do. We beat ourselves up. We're our own worst critic. But yeah, releasing forgiveness to myself and giving myself grace and saying, there was a lot of factors going on here. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot going on. The reason you acted this way or the reason you kept things hidden or whatever it may have been, it was because there was a lot of other things there. It wasn't just this one thing.
Sure.
And it is scary to hold a mirror up to yourself and be like, okay, hey, self, I forgive you.
Yeah, I think most of us carry shame.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that shame is because we've made decisions that violate our moral code. I have a moral code that's different than your moral code.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on decisions I've made, ways that I behaved, and I'm ashamed that I did not do better. But that's the good news, because in this day and age, you recognize that your moral code deserved better. And given the chance to do it over again, you would do it over again. It's one of the most beautiful things about the human condition is we feel ashamed about what we did because we've grown and matured, and given that same choice today, we wouldn't do it again. And once we realize that, it gives us a little bit of permission to start forgiving ourselves, because we're harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else.
And the person who's hurt us, if they could go back, they probably wouldn't either.
Isn't that fascinating?
That makes me want to cry.
Wow. Wow. They're feeling the same. They're probably feeling the same thing, but just in a different lane.
Yeah. Most of the time, I would say most people, if they knew that they hurt someone,
Yeah.
they would go back and make it right and not do that thing.
Yeah, totally.
So I almost think like if we can have that in the back of our head, that makes it a little, and again, I'm not giving everybody an excuse here, because there's some people who are just not good people, and that's that. But most people, I think of like little things, like I know we've mentioned on the last episode with conflict resolution, we always tend to bite off the head of the people who are closest to us, because there's that intimacy there. We can be our unhinged self. But if I could go back, I would never lash out at somebody I loved. Like, I would not act like that. I wouldn't take my anger out on them. I wouldn't, project on them. And so if I can think, hey, they wouldn't do that either, like they regret that as well, then that changes everything. And that is when we're asking for forgiveness, most people will always say, I wish I'd never done that. I wish I could go back and change that. And so I think that really just changes the tone of a conversation.
And 2020 taught us, and you've already said it in this episode, we do not know what their backstory is. We don't know what they're dealing with. We don't know what they're going through. It's been hard for all of us. And I just think that forgiveness is a key part of life that we have to get comfortable and get good at. And we need to practice it. Saying that, I read a book one time by Larry Christensen, and I don't remember the title of the book, but it's all about forgiveness. And he said the way that we learn how to forgive people, he talked about building sidewalks out of concrete. He said when you're building a sidewalk out of concrete, you have to get pieces of wood and build a form. And then you get the concrete and you pour it in, you let it sit for a little while, you remove the boards, and now the concrete is there. And he said forgiveness is the same way. You pull together any scrap wood you can to build the form. If forgiveness looks like sending them a birthday card, then send them a birthday card. You don't have to feel the love. You don't have to give them. You just have to do something concrete that starts moving towards your heart changing. So your actions lead, your emotions follow. And so you do things to this person, for this person, that looks like you already have forgiven them. And then over a period of time, it sets up inside of you and your emotions catch up, and you can take all the forms, all the little procedures you are doing away, and the concrete will hold on its own. And so when people say, how do I forgive so-and-so? I say, you've got to do something. You can't just mentally and emotionally say, I forgive them. You might have to bake a cake. You might have to send a card. You might have to do something that causes your heart to catch up and just start behaving like you have forgiven them. Love is beautiful and love is wonderful when it's mushy, gushy, romantic, emotional. But love also is hard decisions and showing up and acting like you love somebody, even when your emotions don't feel like it. And so forgiveness is a lot the same way. It works for everybody. Sometimes you have to do some actions that look like you've forgiven them. And then somewhere along the line, your heart catches up.
That's hard. That's really hard. Like I get the concept, absolutely, that there's something inside me that's like, that's inauthentic.
Okay, that is for someone you want to stay in a relationship with.
Okay.
Because people that you don't want to stay in a relationship with, you just got to learn to forgive them, close the door, set up some boundaries, protect yourself. If you want to stay in a relationship with them, you have to interact with them in good faith. And I understand if you're a strong justice person, black and white person, that feels fake, that feels manipulative. But it truly is saying, I want to forgive you. I'm on the journey and I'm doing the work to get there.
Okay. That clarification on me, because I was like, I'm thinking of, there's people right now that for a long time I have felt prompted to send a text to and to say, I forgive you, but I haven't yet. And I've been like working through that. And I don't want a relationship with them, I don't think. But I wonder what I guess my question to you is it just a text message, or do you feel like sometimes it is just going a little bit above and beyond and doing the birthday card thing?
Remember, it's not about them forgiving you. It's about you forgiving them. So you don't even have to send them a text. They don't even have to know that you forgave them or didn't forgive them. That's not the issue. The issue is, what do I have to do to get my heart over the hurdle? And is there something I can do? And by you provoking a goodwill act may cause them to respond with 2 goodwill acts, which makes it easier for you to say, I do want to be in a relationship with this person. And there's that interaction. There are some people you need to forgive so that you're free, and you don't even need to ever talk to them again the rest of their life. And I wouldn't tell anybody that I'd forgiven them unless they were waiting on a forgiveness. Why do they need to know? The worst thing that could happen is you finally forgive them and say, by the way, I forgive you. It's like, for what? I didn't do anything wrong to you. And then you start it all over again. So I guess I would just say that forgiveness works for people you want to stay in a relationship with. But people will say, like, forgive and forget. I don't believe that's good advice. I believe that if you forgive, there's some people you need to remember what they did and make sure they never get a chance to do it again. But there's no reason to torment yourself every day by thinking about it.
Right. Or noticing, whatever that negative thing was, like if you see that in somebody else, or like, especially narcissist.
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, if you've lived with a narcissist, then you know real quick how to point it out. Hey, if another one comes along, you're like, that's narcissistic tendencies. I'm going to put up a boundary quickly. And so again, you don't want to forget those things. Like, that's some good information there to protect yourself from future pain or hurt.
That's true. And remember, accusations from a narcissist are really confessions. I saw it on a meme. It's got to be true. No, it really is, because narcissists only think about themselves. So everything they project on you is something that's coming out of them.
Oh,
I strongly believe that when someone harms us, we should begin the journey at some point of forgiveness. But that journey may be, I'm sorry, you did this to me, and I'm never allowing you to do that again. You don't get to be part of my life. You can still forgive them, but you protect yourself. And people act like, well, if I forgive them, then that I excuse their behavior. I let them do it to me again. And I'm like, no, you don't. That's 2 different things. Forgiveness is to set you free. Boundaries are to protect you.
Absolutely. And, as I'm thinking about it, I feel like my motives, I'm just being very vulnerable and transparent. My motives in texting those people, I feel like, is because I want them to know they hurt me. And I don't think they have a dang
They
clue.
don't. Yep.
And so me being like, I forgive you. Well, they'd be like, what the heck? What do you mean? For what? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. And so like right now I'm like, oh, I need to check my heart. Because maybe I would be petty, maybe that's why I've not done it, because I'm actually being petty. But yeah, and I think that's hard when you also want to be like, when someone hasn't even recognized that they've hurt you, what do you do with that? Like,
Yeah. I had a situation where me and another person had a knockdown drag out. It was not pretty. It was one of the worst hurts I've ever experienced personally. It took a year or two, and I sent the person an email and just said, I want to say to you, I'm sorry for my part in that. And I expected them to take some responsibility. And they're like, you're forgiven. That was it. They took no responsibility for their piece. So I had to deal with unforgiveness all over again.
yeah.
So by the way, while we're here, Emily, am I one of those people that you need to forgive?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay. I would want you to send me a text. Because
yeah. Tonight, just be expecting. I'm like, I forgive you.
I'll look at it in the morning. I'm not looking at it tonight.
Yeah. It's on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people would come up to me and they say, Pastor, I forgave. I said, for what? And they would then proceed to tell me. And either one, they'd be upset that I wasn't even aware of it. Or two, this was their opportunity to just unload the wagon. It's just like, oh, you don't know what you did? Well, let me just tell you. And they don't unload the wagon. So I just tell people, say, nobody has to know. This is a gift you give to yourself. What you're doing is you're evicting the perpetrator from your brain, getting them out of your life. If you want relationship with them, you just can't have relationship with that bad part of them, that hurtful part of them. And you do not have to forget it. You don't have to keep them in your life. You don't have to keep being abused. Forgiveness is a free gift you give yourself. And the weirdest thing, Emily, and I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but when I was writing this book, I asked Tina, I said, is there anybody that I have not forgiven? Is there anybody I'm holding unforgiveness? And she said, no, you forgive everybody. I don't know how you do it. And I said, I don't either. I think it's a divine gift because I never worked for it. I never asked for it. For whatever reason, I have less of an issue with that area. There's other areas I have, worse problems or more proclivities. But with forgiveness, it's just, I learned early on, I want to be free. I am not carrying all that junk. And so I pretty quickly, and of course we talked about conflict resolution, I lean into conflict resolution because I don't want to carry unforgiveness. Right.
Yeah. And I'm definitely somebody that, I hate when there's tension. I hate it.
Me too.
So I'm like, we'll just try to get this forgiveness stuff going because I don't like the way this feels. I know we are, I might be opening a can of worms, but I'm going to ask you this question because I'm genuinely curious. What do you do? And a lot of people may not have fully ever delved into secondhand offense. And that is, if somebody has hurt your friend and now you're offended and you're upset, what does forgiveness look like for that? Because even right now, I am upset because I have a friend who's been hurt. And it's really bothering me again, because I'm like super protective and like loyalty to the kilt when it comes to the people in my life. I will fight for them. And sometimes to my own detriment. But what do you do with the secondhand offense forgiveness? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest ones of all time. A girlfriend comes to you. She's got a knucklehead boyfriend. He keeps doing stuff that betrays her, hurts her. She comes to you. The two of you mourn together. You get all mad at him. The next day, he apologizes. She falls back in love with him in like a nanosecond. That she forgives him, moves on, and you're just stuck. You're just like, do you not remember all the stuff we talked about last night? And the problem with the secondhand offense is you weren't part of the offense to start with, so you have no part in the solution. And that's why we have to be very careful to love the people in our world, but not take on their burdens. because you can't resolve it. There's no way to make up for it. And they are truly the hardest one. You hurt most moms, if you hurt them, they can find the grace to forgive you. You mess with their kids, they'll do, illegal things to you. They're willing to go to jail for 20 years to get even with you. And that's the hardest one, is secondhand offenses. And it's difficult because we love the people we love. And yet we have to stay out of it because there's no way that we're a part of the solution. And many times they move on and we get stuck there. I don't have a good answer for that one. That is very difficult. Once you take on that offense, it's hard to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially just to the example that you're using, when the person you're offended for won't make the decision or the choices that help get them out of a situation, or they don't put the boundary down, I feel like that's fuel to your fire that you just continually get angrier and angrier. Or at least I do, because I hate seeing people get trapped in situations. And so it's like, you're putting gasoline on a fire at that point. And it's hard.
But you can't do their part for them.
Right.
And one of the things that most frustrates me is when I hear a person that's in a couple and one of them says, I don't like their bad behavior, so I'm going to work harder at modeling good behavior, hoping they will change. And I'm like, you can't do their job. At the end of the day, you doing more will never get them to do their piece, do their part. And you caring about your friends, saying you've got to put up these boundaries. If they're not willing to do it, they're going to get hurt again. And we who love them are going to get, have the byproduct and get hurt with them. And we've got to be very careful because people do let people violate them.
Yeah. And that's so hard to sit back and watch.
Yes, it is.
Ooh, man.
Well, this was a little heavy. All right.
No, it's good. I mean, definitely heavy. But I know for me, just being able to talk a little deeper, forgiveness is such, and when your book comes out, I feel like I'm going to need to read the book and then we'll process the book because I'll have more things. And I'm sure a lot of people will have some feedback too that we can dive into. But forgiveness is so multifaceted, so complex. I mean, it's based off of occurrence to occurrence, situation to situation. Like, it's so vast. And so having a little bit of framework, like you said, I love that visual of the pieces of wood. If we can just have a little bit of framework moving forward, I think that helps us tremendously. It may not be this perfect cookie cutter situation every time where we get to use the formula of forgiveness. But at least we can say, again, I'm going to make the choice to get on the journey. I'm going to get on the train of forgiveness. That doesn't mean I'm going to go get to a destination and that'll be it. I never think about it again. And life is rainbows and sunshines. But at least I'm actively trying to get there.
And one final thing for me, the takeaway for me is the aha moment you had when you realized that you feel shame and regret because you would not have done that now, but neither would have they. And the other person probably has regrets as well, gives us a level of empathy and compassion that awareness brings that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. That was a real takeaway for me.
Oh, well, I'm glad I could just be out here on a public forum.
It's what we do.
Getting all mushy. And I was like, I think I'm going to cry. I probably will one day. Yeah, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to your book. And of course, friends, we will keep you updated with Nick's book. I'm excited for you to just be on that journey as well. I think that'll be a gift for all of us. And when that comes out, of course, we'll be telling y'all all about it. But until then, make sure that you have subscribed and downloaded the podcast. Make sure that you're leaving us a review. It doesn't have to be an epic novel. It could just be a sentence of, hey, I like this show. We would
and
really
comment.
appreciate.
Leave us comments so we have stuff to talk about that interests you.
Yes, comment here on, you can comment on YouTube, on our email, let's process that podcast at gmail.com. Sorry, I almost got tongue-tied there. Or on our Facebook, our Instagram, like I said, anywhere that you can reach out. We love to hear the feedback. I appreciate those of you who are just pouring out your hearts to us. Again, it's helping us take direction for the discussions that we have here, and leave us a question on the email as well. And I think that's it. Anything else for housekeeping?
We're
Very good. Awesome. You guys have a fantastic week, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.